What's up, everybody? Welcome to another Homestead from Scratch tonight. Here with my co-hosts Logan Hyde and John Tejan, and we're gonna talk a little bit about living fences tonight. Before we get started, I just got back from doing some work helping install somebody's solar power system, and got into a little bit of trouble because I guess it's not that big of trouble. The guy that we're working for was all right with it, because what had happened was we were digging to bury some of the solar PV cable that goes into this guy's house. And as we were trenching, we started to smell some natural gas.
Oh, God.
And
Oopsie. Call before you dig.
So I got an education on natural gas today. And what had happened was they had marked the line for the 811 when they came out. They marked the city natural gas line that comes into the house, but he had a natural gas line that was running to an outdoor fireplace that was buried 3 inches under the ground.
Oh,
that we were unaware of. And so as we were just scraping the ground, because we were a little cautious, because we weren't so sure if there may or may not have been a gas line running that direction. And as we were scraping, the tool did not hit the line. A rock that was put pressure on from above pushed down into the line and made a small puncture in it. And that caused the whole big thing to put a pause on our efforts. And now he's got to get a guy to come out to come fix his gas line, because the gas department had to put a lock on the dang gas line. So we thought we were almost home free with this project, and then we run into this. And so anyway, I just had to share that little story before we got started.
Well, I figured I'm gonna have to swap to a computer now, because we were getting started and John put his background on after he saw that that Greg had his shipping container, and I was trying to put one on. And since I'm on a daggum cell phone, I don't get a background. So yeah, I'm gonna have to, they're gonna start doing stuff with a computer, I guess, or figure out how to do it on the cell phone. I'm sure maybe there's got to be some way to do it, but I know I can on YouTube. If you're doing like YouTube lives or shorts, you can throw you a background on. So, but yeah, we've had a busy week. I actually lost my voice last night and this morning. Yeah, and it was coming back. I had my voice was kind of quiet at church, and I told people I lost my voice. They said, well, it seemed like it come back. I said, well, kind of, because normally I'm talking at 80 decibels higher than what I am right now. So voice has been coming back. Had something to do with some sinus issues, I guess, but did a whole lot of talking. We had a mushroom workshop yesterday, and so we had a real good time at that, and been doing a lot of stuff. We Friday planted a living fence over at Greg's, and we're looking forward to that. I was supposed to have a live stream this week with Nevermore Farms, but with a bunch of stuff that was going on, and they had some donation stuff they had to handle Saturday. We didn't get to do that, but I know I've got some really exciting stuff coming up with them. I've got them working on looking at some fish safe soaps and making like a line of that stuff, which that's just in the makings. We're going to see how it goes, but I'm pretty excited about what we might be able to do with that, considering all the future stuff I'm going to have on the channel about some gray water and composting toilets, flushable composting toilets eventually. So looking forward to that. But yeah, we've had a pretty wild week so far.
Wow, what's new with you, John?
Well, thanks to Logan, he hooked me up with some trees. So yesterday I planted my my trees out in the pasture, and I guess I didn't get real technical about the spacing on it. Actually, they're pretty tight. There's probably a foot on the willows and the poplars. So I didn't because I packed them in so tight, I didn't get quite as big a run as I thought I was going to get, which is fine. But I ended up, and those willows and poplars that you got me, Logan, they were big enough to cut in half. So I've actually probably planted 100 trees, or 100 cuttings. Let's say they're not trees yet. But one of the things, and this may dovetail into our discussion on living fences, is now some of your cuttings were 3-4 feet long. A lot of them were. Most of them were at least 3 feet long. And the problem I have with a cutting that long is the wind up here is horrendous. So if you cut it down to only, maybe there's only 6 to 8 inches sticking out of the ground, the wind's not gonna, because when a newly planted tree, that kind of swaying back and forth, while it can be beneficial until those roots get established, it can cause some problems, because every time it moves, it'll break off a little root cluster or something, and it just takes a while. So lower to the ground, and it might not get up to size near as fast as the other ones, but I think I'll have a better overall survival rate. That's what I'm hoping, but with 100 trees, if I get 80 of them, I'll be happy. But I have not planted my mulberries yet. Those can take a little while, because they're still dormant, whereas the some of those willows already got some leaves opening up on them, and the poplars are not too far behind.
Yep.
Now, does it depend on when you plant the trees? Like, if it's like, because you could pot them, right? Like, you could put them in a pot and keep them growing for a season until you figure out where exactly you want to plant them, right? If it's a bare root tree,
absolutely,
or a cutting.
Yeah. And like the size that we were planting for Greg, they had good roots on them, but they didn't have just like a huge, root ball on them or whatever. Gotcha. So, enough to really be established and be dangerous. But even after like year 2 or 3, I made the video on moving trees on my YouTube channel. And you can do that. You can even, plant them and then transplant them again, as long as you do it during the dormant season. But yeah, a pot's a good idea too. Just putting them in pots. The one thing about putting them in pots is if you have dry weather, if it's during the summer, you got to keep them little puppies watered, or else they'll die on you.
Yeah, I kind of don't have a rule, but I try to abide by it. Is when I buy a tree or start a seed or a seedling, I really only want to have to plant it once. Because some people, they'll go with, like, I'm setting up my seed starting routine here. I ordered a bunch of shit off Amazon, and it'll be here tomorrow, I think. But the thing is you can start them in those little, like, 1 or 2 inch pots, or flats, and you're growing them under light. I mean, if you plant them too early, they're going to have to go into another. You're going to have to transplant it into another pot if you can't put it outside, because you just it'll get root bound. So every time you transplant something, let's just be honest, you have a potential for failure and damaging the tree. So I try to keep it. I'm going to grow most of my tomatoes in, like, red Solo cups, because those are big enough to, I'll just plant that directly out in my garden when it's ready.
Mhm.
And so I don't want to get off on a seed starting podcast, but it's just something I'm working on right now. And I got a really good pointer from a guy off of YouTube, is if you're planting those, and this is specifically for tomatoes because this is the way tomatoes grow. He only fills half of the cup up with soil and then puts the seed in there and lets it come up to the top of the cup. And just like you do with potatoes, you
I
backfill
like it.
and it'll start spreading more roots out along that stem. And kind of like you do growing potatoes in buckets, you just keep putting dirt on top of the greenery as it comes out, and that just sets out new roots and new potatoes. The same thing with tomatoes. It'll just have a much more healthier root mass by the time you do plant it out.
Well, John, that completely solves your leggy problem from putting them in the windowsill.
Yeah.
Because you can start with that much soil in the bottom and just keep adding as it grows up out of the cup. Ooh, I like that. This is okay. I'm just going to say this. That's really cool. But I'm not going to get on to aquariums. But back when I had aquariums and I had Corydoras, which are the little cory cats, they're tiny little catfish. They're an egg layer. And so when you've got their eggs, you take them and, put them in another container to hatch them or whatever. People would do water changes, but it's really hard to do water changes when you've got these tiny, tiny little catfish. So what you do is you start, like say you could do it even a 5-gallon bucket, and you would just put like a cup of water in the bottom. And then you would just add water rather than doing the water changes.
Oh,
and so that way you're just creating, you're doing the volume, and it reminds me of that. There's a lot of that stuff that, it sounds so simple after you hear it, but you would have never thought of it.
Well, and an old gardener trick with tomatoes, which is the same thing, is that you dig a trench and plant them in sideways, as opposed to just digging a hole and then it comes up. Because which works for me because I only have like 3 inches of topsoil before it gets real rocky, so I can't dig a 6-inch hole to plant a tall plant in. I just have to dig a shallow trench and then just bury the whole stem of the tomato plant, and then you'll get roots along there and get better yield, better everything, better health. The more roots you have, the better, obviously. Didn't want to start a podcast on seed starting. Maybe we'll do that next week.
I do have a resource if you guys are looking to buy some seeds in the future, maybe not this season, but also in the future. I interviewed this guy. His online handle is Daggerist on the X platform, but he's a like-minded guy and runs a small seed business out of his farm in Florida. So if you're looking for some seeds, he's got a few different variety of vegetables, herbs, and flowers, and that he sells on his website there, Agorist Acres. The like-minded guy, small business. And then Logan's friends there at Nevermore Farms. I want to bring them up because you did a live stream with them, and nevermorefarms.com right here. And they have some different stuff in their little farm shop that people could go and support. They've got some different products in their farm shop here. Soaps and salves and balms and body butters and candles and all kinds of stuff that they've got there. So you give them a shout out.
Yeah, they're probably going to be like, "Why are you talking about all these hypothetical soaps that we don't have yet?" Because I'm on here, I'm all fired up about having fish safe soaps that could be bought from somebody that's from like a homesteading community. But yeah, I get fired up there, but like you're committing us to stuff that we haven't even looked at yet. Oh, but yeah, they've got a lot of good stuff on there. Their soaps are really awesome, and I really like them. They smell really good. They're good for your skin. It ain't got all the who knows what in like the Dove soaps and everything, because all those soaps that you get from the store, there's been all kinds of people finding out that it's like, oh, this shampoo might make you infertile. So, there's
always
there's
read the terms and conditions.
Yeah, always read the terms and conditions of your body wash. So good healthy soaps over there. But yeah, the pot thing though, John, with like doing the tomato, we planted with Greg's willows. We did post hole diggers, and we planted them deeper than what their roots were, because they'll just shoot out roots from that from the stem that's buried. Yeah. And so like with the cuttings, we buried in some long cuttings, but we tried to get them in there real deep. And he had a little tiny piece of rebar, so you can do that. And the willows, you can even lay them sideways, just like you would a tomato. Mm-hmm. And they'll grow up, little stems, which is another way to do it. If you've got long cuttings, you can go in and lay the cutting down flat on the ground, and then just pile dirt like every, say 6 inches on it, and it'll send up shoots from that. If you're going to do something like a living fence anyway, you can do that. And now that you've got your 100 trees established, you'll be able to plant thousands from that. So like next year you'll go through and you'll trim everything, or maybe the year after that, and you'll just be like, well, I never have to get a willow tree or a poplar tree again.
Well, I had planned to do that originally with my original poplars, but I was a dumbass and I allowed the deer to get on them, and so my cutting stock was severely limited this year, and that was my own fault, But I've got these; they're secured; they're not going anywhere. They've got a wire around them, so the deer won't. They won't. Deer are kind of a funny. Funny animal. If they can't see where they're gonna land, when they jump over something, they won't jump over something. They get kind of freaked out a little bit. But if you have, because I've only got maybe 4 feet between the wire covers about a 4-foot wide strip that the trees are planted in. And it's narrow enough where they're not going to jump over in the middle of that, because there's another wire on the other side. So it just it's more of a deterrent, psychological deterrent, than it is a physical barrier. Use your brain there, I guess, and the natural instincts of a deer against itself is the idea behind it. So
after Logan and I got out there and planted all those trees, I then started a YouTube rabbit hole on everything that you could do with a willow living fence. And it is incredible.
Welcome to the cult, brother.
It is incredible. So now, let's look at Pinterest at all these cool things you could do with willow living fences. I mean, you can like cross them and do all kinds of crazy patterns and stuff.
Not only the fences, but think about all the structures you can build out of willow.
Yes, I found a lady that was building art and like domes, like weaving the willows into domes and creating like living architecture and stuff. And such a versatile tree to do like all this kind of stuff. And then, you get the benefits of what you were telling. Share some benefits of these willow trees with the folks.
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, like a living dome made out of willow, what kid or man-child doesn't want to have their own willow dome to play in, and arches. Yeah. Like that one there, people make tunnels out of them. So the willow is it's so versatile. One of the things that I really like about it, now it is not the staple food to say like to give cattle all winter long and then expect the cattle to put on a lot of weight. But rabbits can definitely survive off of willow, and if you're growing them in the proper soils, the protein content and the nutrient content, all of the things that an animal needs can be provided from willow. They're extremely fast growing. If you get something like a hybrid, which is the hybrid that I have is a cross between a Chinese willow and a white willow, which is Salix alba. And let's see here, Salix, it starts with an M. I'm forgetting the scientific name for the Chinese one. It escapes me, but it's a cross between those. And they're all clonal, so they're all taken from cuttings, and they'll grow anywhere from, they'll do about 8 foot in a season if you're planting them from cuttings, if you really don't, tend to them that much. But if you baby them a little bit, you can get 12 or 15 feet out of them.
Wow.
And they're wonderful fodder. They're wonderful for making all kinds of structures. One really good thing about them is they cast kind of a light shade. So they're really good to put in areas that like maybe you wanted to get some oaks established in, or if you wanted to plant them around your garden so that you could get more dappled light through the morning and evening hours. And, if you live in the South, sometimes your garden can just get baked. So having them kind of planted around a garden is a really good option for, having some shade rather than having to buy shade cloth. And you can just pile up mulch on top of them and they'll grow more roots in there. So if you had like just a box, say you did a box of willows with a little gate there, and then you put your garden in the middle of it, and you kept everything pollarded at 8 foot so that you're not just completely shading out the garden. And you just piled mulch in there and planted into that. It doesn't matter that you have roots in the garden because you're not going to be bringing a tiller in. And even if you wanted to, willows are pretty resilient. If you just tilled one side of them, they're probably going to be just fine. And you can always have more cuttings to plant. But, benefits, food, shade. They're really good at also retaining creek beds. So if you have a creek bed, you'll notice that some people, they'll go and they'll cut out a pasture for cattle, and there's a creek bed still running through there because it's got woods here, say like woods here and woods here, but then you got the pasture in the middle. But that creek just looks really crappy in where the cattle are. And so you can go in and you can plant, kind of like what's in this picture right here. You can plant willows all along the bank and then weave some of the willows in between that to be able to keep the banks from eroding. So I mean, there's endless possibilities with willow, and it grows so fast. If you take care of it and you keep enough stock, you buy it once. That's why I always tell people, I really should, everyone that has willow really should go up on their prices, because you only sell it to someone once if they're really kind of switched on permaculture type person, because you will never buy it again. I will never go online now and say, let me find some hybrid willow cuttings or trees to buy. Because I mean, I've got them for multiple generations now.
Yeah, it's just amazing looking at, all these different ideas on structures and fencing and, using them for like raised beds, all the kind of creative things you can do with these willow trees. And you can space them so close together and they'll still be growing. And I saw one guy that planted them, and the rabbits had like kind of during the winter time, he was up in a more northern climate, had like eaten some of the bark at the lower part of the willow. And he was saying, if they die, I'll just take a new cutting and just stick it right in there, let that one die, and let this new one grow up and have the willows to replace that section of the fence. So really amazing. Like, I mean, you can't do that with a wooden structure that you build that's, already been cut down or whatever. So pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm real interested in that, because there was a time when I was wanting to grow bamboo for almost the same purpose.
Yeah.
Bamboo is different it's a good construction material, but it's not a good fodder tree, at least as far as
Mm-hmm.
But again, they grow feet and feet and feet every year. Very prolific, lots of uses for their material, and they don't really require any care. They just go. The what you have to the problem with bamboo is keeping it controlled into one area, and so it just doesn't spread everywhere. But yeah, because I was thinking about bamboo, but it's like if these willows, take off, it's just like there's no reason to, I can do what I want with it as far as a construction material to make whatever out of much easier.
Yeah, it's really a really neat little project to do, and it took us. Well, we planted 46 trees, and me and Logan working together with some post hole diggers. I think we did it in about 3 hours or so, maybe 4.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So,
and we was kind of piddling. I mean, we didn't get out there and just break our backs, so and if you're doing just cuttings, and especially if the ground's soft where you're doing it, and you've got some bigger cuttings that don't really want to bend on you, because the ones that we had, you really couldn't just shove them into the ground, but you get something about the size of your finger, and take those like little 1 foot cuttings and go and shove them in the ground. If it's just after a rain, you ain't even got to have a piece of rebar. You just shove them suckers in there. You go through and plant 1,000 cuttings probably in just a couple of hours, if you're doing it that way with all the ideal conditions.
Yeah, I saw a guy, a YouTube video of a guy, I think over in Denmark, Finland, Norway. I get all those places confused. It was it's one of those places in Northern Europe, right? And he just took a tractor with a single subsoiler. It basically just cuts about a 2-inch trench in the ground, and he just couple hundred feet. He just did that, and there's just a trench, and he just had bundles of like poplars, and he just put one in like every foot, and it was just like all you have to do is go back by and just push the dirt back down in the hole, and I mean, it's really, you can be really efficient at it if you have a need for a half-mile fence or something like that, as long as you got enough cuttings, obviously. But yeah, it's and what I used is I just have like a 60-pound breaker bar, with a hard tip, because I have to break rocks so often on my farm. And you just go boonk, and it goes down about 6 inches. You pull it up, you stick the thing in there, and you stomp around it, and you go to the next one. And I mean, it's literally that quick. It took me more time to cut the cuttings and fool with other stuff than it did to actually plant them. So, but it's and we actually got just a brief rain shower in the middle of the night last night, so that was good, just enough to keep the ground wet. And so they ought to just start taking off, because as anybody who has cows this time of year, you just like every day you're going, I think it's getting a little greener. I think it's getting a little bit greener. Come on, grass, starts going. But the amazing thing, you go from that, typically the 1st of April, it's really ready to start grazing again. It's, it's probably 4 or 5 inches maybe, and you can start grazing it. But within 30 to 45 days, it's, 4 feet high, and you can barely get through it. It's so thick. So you go from nothing to too much so fast. It's just, it's amazing, and, but yeah, this is the time of year I'm just like, over that hill over there, it looks a little greener than it did yesterday. We got a little bit of rain, we kind of got some sun. So you just kind of, it's wishful thinking more than anything else. But it is starting to green up, and there is a little bit more for them to eat. That, and the only reason I care is because I got to feed them hay until, there's enough grass for them to eat without any supplementation with grass, with hay, excuse me. So
would you say you're a grass farmer more than a beef farmer now, John?
well, actually, if you go one step further, you know,
So,
you're a microbe farmer, basically as long as you got your microbes going, which, and I let everybody know on the channel. I did find a guy. Might divert a little over into a little bit of a biochar talk. I did find a guy fairly close that sells it in bulk,
yeah.
and it's like $130 for a cubic yard, which is quite a bit of biochar.
That's a lot of
And
biochar.
that's cheap too. If you got a
Very
pickup
cheap.
truck, he goes, just bring your pickup truck and I'll fill it up. He goes, you can get a little bit and try it out if you want to, or you can get a whole truckload. I'm like, if I'm driving over there, I'm gonna get a truckload.
Yeah.
Yeah, figure out take a look at his process, because that's quite a bit of material to be doing.
But I mean, he even used the P word, permaculture, and he rotationally grazes his cows, and he's like, yeah, come on over, because I go, well, with that much, I said I can experiment in my pasture and start spreading into my pasture, and I'll be able to see the results. Obviously, it will definitely have an impact. And he goes, well, I'll show you what it does. He says, I put it on my pasture, So he's real welcoming me, want me to come out and check his operation. So that's a really good positive thing to meet up with people like that, because he sounds like he'd actually sound like a good person for our
one of us.
Well, yeah. and that, but isn't that the way it is? Is like, as soon as you meet somebody, I mean, especially if you talk farming or gardening or anything like that, and it's like one or two, that's one of your guys, and you can open up and talk about anything after that, because some people, like I talk to cattle farmers, and you just have to be real careful about what you say, because they get offended really quick.
Yeah.
The wrong thing.
Especially the guys that have been doing it, the old way. Well, yeah, the industrial agriculture way for a long time.
Because I talked to a couple of those people. They're good people, but it's like, if I were to suggest that they change the way that they do their operation and not take the government subsidy money, they'd look at me like, are you out of your mind?
Yeah.
You've lost your mind.
Yeah, a lady I interviewed, Neethi Bali, started that food church in North Carolina, and she had the similar experience going and talking to farmers and seeing if they could raise the meat more in regenerative ways. And when you approach a farmer and you're trying to tell them that what they're doing is the totally wrong way to do it.
Yeah, you're not going to get anywhere.
You're not going to win any people over by doing that. So she said, just kind of like encouraging, this is the type of quality product or whatever. This is the kind of product we're looking for. And, just being there to give them a steady supply of income from a person that's going to buy your stuff if you're using the right practice or the practices that they're looking to find and everything. So supporting the farmer, supporting the local farmer, and giving them those incentives by buying from them regularly, having a source where they can distribute their meat in the local area, and being able to provide them that distribution channel,
right,
is a big deal that she was talking about by forming the food church idea.
Yeah. Well, when you're talking to somebody who's not that receptive, or you may have a clue that they might not be that receptive, like an old farmer, that's doing it the same way, since he was in the 4-H club in 1962 or whatever, the best way, and this comes from my salesman background, is the best way to do that is use yourself for example. It's like, because they'll be talking, it's like, oh well, I've run out of grass, or I did this. So you go, you know what? That used to happen to me as well. You know what? And I found out that, if I did it this way, I could save some money. And it really helped me. As opposed to saying, you're doing it wrong. That's old school. You're dumbass. You're ruining the environment. You're raising shitty meat. You're being cruel to animals, which you could probably say to a lot of people, but you can't start a conversation that way. It's like talking politics and just starting in on somebody's belief system, and it's like you're never going to get anywhere with that. You got to go little by little, and use yourself as an example.
You have to be the example. Yeah.
It's like, oh, I did that, and I found out it was a whole lot cheaper if I didn't bush hog, and I let it grow into the fall, and then the cows would eat that during the winter, and I didn't have to use as much hay. So that's how I got through last winter. And they're like, oh yeah, well, how'd you do? Well, I rotationally graze because I don't, and then you can start that conversation as a solution to a problem, as opposed to just going chest to chest with somebody and telling them how they need to be doing stuff. And I mean, people don't do that, but it comes across that way sometimes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. When you don't realize how you're speaking to somebody. I mean, I realized that in my own life, when I attempt to talk to people about certain information, and you really, they have a certain worldview, and when you present them with some information, if they're not ready to receive that, then they're going to combat you on it. And I have attempted to shift. Sometimes I can't keep my damn mouth shut.
Well, but that happens because you're excited about what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
And
I'm passionate about it.
For instance, last night, out having dinner with another couple, and they knew I had done cryptocurrency, but they're like, well, because it's on the news now and it's in everybody's mind, at least because it's maybe becoming part of the government, so on and so forth. So you're just like, well, what is this Bitcoin? And and it's like, I could have gone on for 2 or 3 hours and got really deep into it, and they would have just went, what are you talking about? And so I just like, oh well, it's this, and why it's different than gold, and why you might, why people expect it to be worth a lot of. I didn't, I said, you have a wallet, and that's where you keep all your stuff, and it's safe. It's not at a bank, blah blah. But I mean, I just kind of left it at that. You got to let people get it what they want. You can't, because you can be an evangelist and be, preach the greatness of Bitcoin, but if people aren't ready to hear it or not on that level, they're just going to be like, are you Mormon? And I don't mean to offend anybody that's Mormon that's listening to this, but
you didn't offend me at all, John.
but you have to worry about coming across that way when you're actually too excited about what you're talking about.
Absolutely.
Just kind of got to take a deep breath and, well, if you're interested in, this or that, but yeah, you can't start out and here's the Bitcoin standard, and here's this book, and you need to read that, watch this video. You can do that if they're interested, but usually the first encounter with somebody, they're not ready for it.
Yeah, it's the Messiah complex. It's like, oh golly, if everyone knew about this, then everything would be just wonderful. So you got to get out there and you got to tell everybody about it. It's kind of, luckily, like when I, and I know I don't want to get into all the messiness of politics and stuff, but like when I became an anarchist so fast because I was never around any other anarchists. Because it was just like, I figured it out on my own. Nobody told me that I was an idiot because I believed that, we needed government. and then I don't do that to anybody else either.
To solve these problems,
we need more government to solve these problems that the government made. And so, if you try to keep your Messiah complex in check, people are a lot more attracted to you because they see what you're doing. That's why, people were attracted, figures in history like Buddha and Jesus and, Gandhi. Like they just basically lived what they preached and were more of a leader than they were like John's talking about, going to farmers and telling them like, oh, hey, you're doing all this wrong and you're screwing stuff up. It's rather, look, this is what I used to do, and I am now, I have repented of all my sins, and I now rotationally graze all of my cattle, and I throw biochar on my trees. It's one of those things. It's like rather just showing the world what you're doing, and they'll be attracted to that. Honey attracts a lot more flies than vinegar.
Yeah, well, when everybody gets that opportunity. I mean, if they're doing some sort of sustainability, regenerative, prepping, however you want to call it, it's different than what the normal average person does in their, in their starter home, their 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage home with a, postage stamp for a yard, and not that I started out that way, so there's nothing wrong with that, believe me. But because they're like, well, why do you have chickens? Why do you do this? Well, and that's a really good conversation starter right now. It's like, you've seen the price of eggs, I don't care what the price of eggs are. I've taken that out of the equation, and then you start talking about, well, you can watch the news and worry about every problem in the world, or just fix your own in your local area and on your own homestead. And guess what? You ain't got time to worry about the big world problems because they don't affect you anyway. But not having food to eat affects me, so I'm going to concentrate on that, And that's a different way of looking at things for some people. And that's a big mind change. That's a big change in attitude for them to pick up on that, because they're just, they get a paycheck and then they go to the store and buy food, and that's the way they exist, and they never think outside that. They don't care they don't know where their food comes. It comes from the Walmart. That's where it comes from, and that's all that they really care. Until they read something, it's like, oh wow, this isn't healthy for you, or that's not healthy for you. It's like, well, that's all you can buy there. So, you could go over here and get it here as opposed to there, and, or you could do it yourself, and try that. So it's an easy conversation you have as long as you can keep your hat on and not get too crazy about it.
Yeah, once you start going down the weeds on stuff, then it's like, oh man, is this guy, this guy got the tinfoil hat on,
But people that are ready to hear it and act on it, they're going to see that it makes sense.
Yeah, that's been my overall like kind of learning up into this point of my life, is that,
well, you have to
people
think
are convinced more of your actions and what you're doing, and give
you also have
more credibility.
You also have to go back to when you learned about all this stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and go, yeah, I remember the first time I figured out that, rotationally grazing cows was better for the environment. I didn't have cows at the time. I didn't even have a farm. But I'm going, what? That makes sense. This Joe Salatin guy's, something he's saying is making a whole lot of sense to me. And Greg Judy really does good with these South Pole cattle. And, and it takes time. You don't get there overnight. Nobody's going to get there overnight. And,
mm-hmm.
But they see something, they're like, maybe I could do that. That's all you can do. You can't put them in a headlock and drag them out to your farm and say, dumbass, this is the way you do it. And if you do it any other way, you're stupid. Sometimes it takes that, but
yeah. So So getting back to our living fences, a couple other things I was thinking about while we're having this conversation is that a couple other benefits is that it's unique, so that it's gonna possibly be a conversation starter when somebody comes to your property. And then the fact that it's natural and it's like part of the natural world. Like I feel like there is kind of a metaphysical aspect to it as well of you're the tree is giving off energy and it's giving off oxygen and all that kind of stuff that we breathe and that we can benefit from as well. So somewhat of a spiritual connection, natural connecting to nature and God's creation type aspect to it as well. So
Yeah, yeah, we got derailed there for a minute, but we always go through beautiful meadows when we get derailed. It's always awesome topics. But the living fences, you know, for people that may not know this, there used to be a thing called hedge laying, and I was actually doing a demonstration of this yesterday with the ladies I did the mushroom workshops with. Lee, Indiana, they had a bill hook that they had recently purchased, and I was showing them how to hedge lay, with some saplings that they wanted gone. There was some privet and there was some other little trees. I can't remember what they were, but there was stuff they didn't want. So I was just giving them a demonstration of how you do that. And people back then, they did not have barbed wire. That was not a thing back in, pre-industrial age, Europe and here in the Americas early, like people, they did hedgerows. There's some hedge laying right there. You're just basically cutting a tree, laying it over, leaving a little bit of cambium intact, so that way it can get nutrients up to the trunks, and they'll grow out shoots from there. And they'll do it a lot of times with a thorny species, so that way the animals won't test it. But you get a hedge that has been laid that's 2 or 3 years old, a bull can't get through that. I mean, it is heavy duty stuff. So with the willows, you don't necessarily have to hedge lay. You can just bend them over and weave them, and they'll pressure graft. But what I recommend to people, so say like you were going to buy willow trees from me, and you got like the 1-year-old trees, which a lot of them are pretty sizable little trees as far as their diameter goes. They're not going to hold in a cow, but they're on their way. If you plant them, I always recommend figuring out how much fence it is that you're wanting to do. Like if you're going to hold in animals or something like that, and then figuring out how many trees you've got and planting them on center of, like, whether it's 10-foot centers or 2-foot centers. And you plant those and let them get started, because if you do just like one piece at a time, that fence can be kind of flimsy for that first year, right? Because you're gonna weave it and everything, and it'll be somewhat strong, but it'll all want to bend. But if you go and you plant, say you're planting on 5-foot centers, and then you go and you take all the cuttings the next year and put them in between, you can weave those and weave them to where they're attached to the stronger stem. So basically you've got like your fence and your fence post. So if you're wanting to do it for, like, containing the livestock, unless it's something like what I've got, like the ducks or chickens, maybe even sheep, you ain't got to worry about it as much. But like with my pigs, for example, it needs to be well established to hold them in.
Yeah. Now, how long does it take to like establish something like this? Like, I guess
pull up one of the pictures there and make it bigger, and I'll give you a guesstimate here, an educated guesstimate.
Uh,
I'll let you zoom in. Those look like, this is actually quite large diameter. It looks like. So what they were doing with a lot of them is you were planting a hedge. You were planting a bunch of trees kind of close together, and you'd let them grow for 3 to probably even up to 10 years in some cases. And they're big trees, and you're laying them over. But if you're doing like a willow fence, I'd say within 3 to 5 years, you've got one of the sturdiest fences that money can buy. I think we lost John. He disappeared.
Yeah, he did. There he is. And
Sorry,
he's back.
guys.
John's back.
I got excited. I was actually trying to go find a YouTube video of it was an old black and white video right after World War II, where this
Yeah.
old guy in tweed jacket and his pipe, and he's got his tools, and he's walking out there with his boots on, and it was just it was amazing, that because the skill isn't, well, it's still there. People still practice it, but it is more of a kind of lost art or folk art
Mhm.
that they do. And then they still have competitions today where it's like hedge laying competition.
Yep.
You have people that come in, is it tight enough? How is the weave? Because just like basket weaving or anything else, there's many different styles and patterns that you can do, and it can be creative. Actually, it can almost be like artwork. And well, from the pictures Greg showed of those fences, and and I think those were hazelwood that they used in the hedgerows over in England. I don't know if that's the same species of hazelnuts or hazelwood, or whether those are actually two different types of plants. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's just the European hazel, because the American hazelnut is actually more cold tolerant than the European.
Oh,
and so
okay.
we've got they're one of the few trees that survived the Ice Age, the hazels. They're extremely cold hardy. American hazelnut, that is. But then the European, I'm pretty sure that's what they use in those hedges that they lay. But a guy who goes into a lot of detail and does it, he does a lot of like bushcraft stuff. It's TA Outdoors. His channel is really awesome, and you can see he's got a part of his property that he bought where there was an old fence, and he talked to the adjoining property owner, and he's got a whole video of him doing hedge laying and goes into it in extreme detail. And so that's a really good video to go check out at TA Outdoors. Well, he's got like he built some Viking houses and some old Saxon housing with like the reed roof and everything. So really good channel, something to check out if you're interested in hedge laying, because you can, there it is. Really cool guy. Got a real big following too. Does a whole lot of bushcraft stuff, and he's got videos on hedge laying. And you can do it if you've got an area that's really growed up, and you go in there and you get your pruning shears and everything. It might be a good bit of work, but you can take something, even with privet, as horrible as that stuff is. If you've got a hedgerow of privet, if you'll go in there and you're not going to take it out immediately, you can go in and you can even try to hedge lay that. It'd be a good way to practice, before you did it on your trees that you cared about.
It also creates a habitat for birds and small animals that may be beneficial as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Birds. That's one of the reasons that we have lost so many.
Quail, I think.
Yes.
We use it as a habitat.
Exactly where I was going with that.
The hedgerows.
Yep. That's one of the main reasons that we've had such a decrease in quail population, is because the hedgerows are gone.
So, because it gives them a good shelter, a good place to hide from predators and things like that.
Well, and they're alleyways. So you think about it. All right, if I'm a little quail, my biggest predators are hawks, and everything that is hawk size and bigger. So coyotes. Yeah, everything. So those hedgerows were really tight. They had a lot of vegetation in them. And so if they needed to go from one forest to another, or from this field to another, they could use those hedgerows as alleyways. Yeah, that's the video that I think that John was talking about there, isn't it, John?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was really cool.
Old guy with his pipe, and he's got a helper there, and they're just going to town, and that was, he's got his whatever. That's not a bill hook, but it's some sort of
brush hook. I think is what that one's called.
But yeah,
And I've got one like that, and it's pretty awesome. But the bill hook, yeah, that's where it's at.
Yeah, I need that because I've got a bunch of privets that grow up close to my hedgerow. Although the cows kind of chew those, they kind of pollard them themselves. they just chew on them and then they're gone, you know. But yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean the habitat aspect of it for the animals is another really cool benefit of doing this kind of thing.
Yeah, that one I'd like to show it to the group. I got to rent it though because they charge money for it because they have to pay for all the work they did on it. It's called Roots So Deep, but it's all about rotational grazing. And they I may have explained this to you before. They take two farms side by side. One rotationally grazes and the other's traditional. And they go in and they do the soil test. They count the birds. They count the insects. They do everything possible to analyze the environment. But one of the things that is surprising is the birds returning, and specifically quail. You know, the guy's like, hey, I ain't seen quail here in 20 years, but I drove up to so and so's farm. And I thought he was just kidding with me that he was, is making quail sounds. But he says, no, he's got quail on his farm. He goes, this is awesome. He goes, I have to go all the way to Texas to hunt quail, because there aren't any around here anymore. And
no, yeah, I don't see them like unless you're raising them yourself. I mean, you don't see any quail or
right
hanging out in the wild around here.
Yeah, but they've got that Root So Deep that you showed. They have it's 4, I think, hour-long episodes where they compare different farms. A lot of them are in the Southeast. Some of them are not too far from us in Alabama, and they're just good old boys, and me and Daddy been farming this way since such and such, and the other guy's with his wife, and he goes, yeah, we were going broke doing that, so we had to change, and it's the same way. It's like, this is what we did. We're not telling you that you need to do it this way, but our farms are right next to each other. It's the same soil, it's the same environment. You can see the difference across the fence. And it's a powerful way of getting people to understand what's at stake and why it's important and all that other stuff. But yeah, it's an interesting series, but maybe we can present that to our group one day if they're interested in watching it.
Yeah, I'm down.
Cool.
Yeah.
I ran across this on my Twitter, but this is something interesting that's coming up as an event in April in Portland, Tennessee. They're going to have comedy, music, and podcast hosts up in Portland, Tennessee. Some folks that I follow, a guy from the Grand Theft World podcast, Ryan Christian, is going to be there from Last American Vagabond. Some comedians, Leonardo Joni, who I shared that joke at our group meeting that she had. And Sam Tripoli. So some comedians are going to be there, and they're going to do some Charlie Robinson. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him, but he's a good researcher. So yeah, I just want to throw that up there and let people know about that, because that's probably going to be an event I'm thinking about going and attending it. Would probably be pretty cool.
So what was the common thread for everybody there? Are they libertarians? Are they anarchists? Are they just people that want to hang out and have a good time? Is there a guiding?
Well, I would say that a lot of the folks that are on the ticket here are folks in the kind of like the anarcho-capitalist, voluntarist circles. And so that seems what it's about. They call it the Third Eye Carnival. And it's the put on by the Anarchist Collective. So big anarchist symbol up at the top. So
Cool.
so yeah, sounds like people of our ilk.
Cool.
So north of Nashville is where it's at, and apparently you can camp out. I guess it's going to be on a piece of property, somebody's property or something like that. So sounds like an interesting event. I just wanted to throw up there
Cool.
if people might want to check it out.
Thank you.
And with that, do I have a link? Yeah. thirdeyecarnival.com. Let's see if I can throw that in the chat there. So you guys can go check it out. If you might be interested in that kind of event. So thank you to Sherry Hyde and MB Heritage Farms for coming by and hanging out in the live stream. And then thank you, Logan. Thank you, John, for hanging out tonight. Where can people find you guys and support you guys?
Go ahead, John.
Oh,
I was going to jump over you, but I felt like it almost sounded like you was about to say. So go ahead.
oh no, I'm on X, Soul Survivor 78, Farmer John. It's my handle, I guess, and you can find me there pretty much. Just say some obnoxious things, and you'll probably get a response out of me. So it's all good.
Yeah, Logan Hyde on Hideaway Homestead on YouTube, and you can email me at hideawayhomestead at gmail.com if you're interested in talking about anything. But yeah, I'm always here on Sunday nights most of the time, and you can find me a lot of times on Greg's channel. We live pretty close, so
if
always
people
doing
were
stuff there.
interested in getting anything from you, Logan, can they email you?
Yeah, just email me. Now, I will say that willow-wise, I will be, I can ship those all summer because I can just get some stems that don't have leaves on them. And, that's okay and everything. The poplar, not so much. Poplars are best planted in the dormant season. So if you wanted any, I had one person that got here towards the very end, and, they caught it just in time. Because like John said, they're not too far behind on leafing out. If you wanted to get that, yeah, you need to let me know quick. But I always tell people February is the best time to do the orders. If you want any kinds of trees or cuttings, that's just going to give you the best success on it. You can buy from a lot of people, all year long, and you can get willow from me all year long. But really, the best time to do it is in the spring or fall if you're planting trees. But if you're doing cuttings, it's a race between rooting and rotting. So you want to get them in at just the right time.
All right, great. And I'm Greg Dowden, and I'm here on the Tinker Tribe channel, and started a new podcast that we're calling Outer Coincidence. Every Thursday is what we're aiming for. Myself and my buddy Robbie, and we're going on some rabbit hole journeys into stuff that's happening in current events and technology, and where we see things headed, some of the research we've done, and some suggestions on how to take, better control of your own life and move in a positive direction. So cool, man. MB Heritage Farm, thank you for that comment. Live stream showed up in my feed, so you're doing something right. Great. So that's good news. Thank you. Subbed and have the bell clicked. So cool. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. All right, guys. That'll be it for this week, and we'll see you guys next week with another topic and another roundtable discussion. So thank you so much. We'll see you next week.